Um, I've been recording a lot of modules for, well, recording and or editing, a lot of modules for straight line recruitment in the last couple of weeks, and they're gradually being released as we talk. This week's releases included a piece on job orders. And the more I worked on that content, which is, I believe it's now available for you to look at if you choose to. Hang on a second, let me just double check. Uh, yes, that is available for you now. Um, the more I looked at that content, the more I realized that most of the problems I have experienced, and equally most of the problems I hear people experiencing, the sort of stuff when, if you go into, I don't know whether you guys go into recruiters' Facebook groups or chat groups, but the kind of things that people come up with all day long about, you know, managers getting decision-making disorders or um, the interview process suddenly becoming 17 steps long without them knowing it was going to happen, or they've suddenly got three new decision makers they've never heard of that are involved, or whatever, all the stuff. Or you put you think you're working a job, you put your candidates in, and the hiring manager goes, not really. Or alternatively, for my friends in talent acquisition, you're in there, you think you're sourcing the best candidates, and then you present them to your colleagues, and they go, no, not really. No, that's not it. And the more I think about it, almost all of it comes down to the job order. Actually taking the brief, the instructions, the template from the client, prospect, internal hiring manager, or internal partner, whatever situation you're relating to. Because the typical situation, if you're an agency recruiter, the typical situation is you get somebody on a call, or you're chatting with them online, and they go, "Oh yeah, we've got this vacancy, and yeah, if you want to take a run at it, yeah, very happy to do that." And you sign off your terms of business, and then you go, "Yeah, yes, 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 yes." So jumping up and down, waving your pants in the air, and I've got a role to work. I've got a job to work. No, you haven't. You've got an expression of interest. Not close to being the same thing, I'm afraid. Um, a job order is for two reasons. And most people miss the second one. The first reason is it gives you the information to do the job properly. It gives you the information to do the recruitment, the sourcing of candidates, the screening of them, the pitching of them. It gives you all the tools you need to actually do the recruitment job properly. But the other thing it does is clarify and distill and gain commitment from the other person, whether that's an internal colleague or whether it's an external client. If somebody has to sit there and tell you precisely what kind of person they want and precisely what kind of person they don't want, what will rule somebody in, what will rule them out, where are they likely to come from, which sources should you never speak to? If somebody has to think about that, if they have to define their interview process, if they have to define precisely the parameters for what the offer might be before you even go searching, if they have to think about what this role is for, how urgent it is, what happens if it gets filled quickly, what happens if it doesn't get filled at all. When they have to think about all that, they become much more committed and bought into the process. I say this as somebody who's hired a fair number of people over the years. It's very easy for somebody who is hiring, and we've had this conversation a few times. I dislike the term hiring manager because there aren't any. There are managers who do their job, they run their department, their team, their division. Oh, and they do some hiring sometimes. In the private equity world, there are partners who build businesses, who buy businesses, who do finance. Oh, and then occasionally they hire people. So to actually get someone to sit down and think about it, really think about it, because sometimes what we don't realize is the basics are not there. Let me give you, for instance, I was talking with a former colleague a couple of weeks ago, and they said that they know what I do for a living. So they were saying, "Oh yeah, we're hiring for a thing." They're actually hiring for a graphic designer, which was kind of interesting for me. But anyway, they were hiring for a graphic designer. I said, "Okay, well, why?" They said, "Well, we had somebody leave and we've got to replace them. Is there that much work on? Well, no, not really. But we've got a gap in the org chart, so we've got to get somebody in. It's not uncommon for somebody to fill the hole in the organization chart, not because they've got a real role, not because the job is urgent or there's work piling up, but because their internal perception, their internal status, their internal authority and power is determined by how many people are in their team, how many people are in their company. You say to somebody, "Oh, you must have heard this expression. Oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, I do this. I've got 600 people working for me. I've got 100 people working for me. I've got a team of 30." Like that's a status statement. Like the number of people that are in their team determines their status or authority within the organization. And this former colleague of mine was literally hiring this graphic designer because the old one had left, not because they need them, not because they need a spectacularly good one, but because they've got an empty desk. So they should have somebody in it, or else come budget time, if he hasn't filled the role, well, he quite clearly doesn't need anybody then, does he? So people recruit for all sorts of reasons, and not all of them are good ones. So the reason for the job order and the reason for doing it right, and by right, I mean much more thoroughly than almost anybody else does. The reason to do it right is it doesn't just clarify for you, it clarifies for them. And if the role isn't really necessary, if the role isn't actually going to happen, better that we find out now than later. If the role is really important and incredibly significant, better that they find out now than later, because it will create impetus, it will create urgency and desire for what might have been a seat filling exercise. So both of us get something out of the job order. I'm not going to give you the whole content because that is available in the in the academy. It's in the module 10 called the job order form. I love a bit of factual branding. Um, but within that process, it's a very detailed process that I recommend we work through. And I've never, ever managed to do a complete job order in less than 30 minutes. Typically, it takes me 45 minutes to an hour. It's not unusual. There's a couple of my former clients in the insurance space where I had to sit down with them in over a couple of meetings to really go through this whole process. Not because it couldn't be done, but because they had to go away and think about some of the stuff. They had to go away and get some information in order for me to complete the job order for them and start working for them, actually start being productive. So this does take time to do it right, but it's worth it for all sorts of reasons, not least of which doing it right will prevent all the usual crap that we get as recruiters, all the stuff about candidates getting knocked back when we thought they were spot on, interview process being changed, realizing that they don't care about how long it takes to fill the job. So there's no urgency about it. All of that is dealt with in the job order if you do the job order process right. So in terms of basic content, let me give you an example on this, by the way. There's a personal coaching client of mine, and we were looking at what it is they do because they're very successful at the moment, and we were looking at trying to lift the level. And one of the defining factors of why they were so successful is that their brief from the client, they use the term brief rather than job order, their brief from the client was so damn comprehensive, so detailed, so precise that it made their recruitment job really easy. And their customers are incredibly bought in. Their clients are genuinely bought into the process. So they're pulling the recruitment consultant rather than being pushed. So it's a really important factor. So in terms of general content, let me just whiz through the broad headings. Please feel free to scribble these down, though they are available in the straight line recruitment part of the Influence Academy. First is background. What is this role about? How's it come about? Has it come about because the previous six people left, having done 2 weeks each? more red flags than Red Square on May Day? Or is it that the company's expanding? Is it that they're setting up a new team? What is it? What's the background to not just the business, but the role? What's going on? Secondly, vision and objectives. Again, yes, for the company, because that's kind of nice to help flesh out the pitch. But in terms of the role, what's the long-term aspect of this job, not just for the candidate, but for the client, because that gives you context, because that will start to define how important this is as opposed to how much of a form-filling exercise it becomes, which takes us on to urgency. Now, we're going to build the urgency as we go through. We're not just going to ask them now how urgent it is. We are, but that's not all we're going to do. But the first thing is, at the moment, how urgent is it? Because we're recruiters. We can see the invoice at the end of the process. We think every job is urgent because it is to us, but to them, it's number 64 on their to-do list, and it never rises above 60. So, it's always going to be back burner. It really doesn't matter. It's filling the slot in the organization chart. It's not mission critical hiring. So what's the urgency? Then we want the hiring process. The latest thing I'm coming across, I'm hearing a lot of people talking about this. I don't know whether you're experiencing it or not, but you've got the interview, second interview, all that sort of good stuff. You've got the panel interview, fine. You've got taking people out for lunch and seeing if they can eat with a knife and fork and if they're rude to the staff. Always a good idea. But what I'm now getting a lot of things, particularly in marketing type roles, is we've got this sort of issue. How would you address it? And as part of the interview process, people are basically getting people to do an intern type project plan or come up with a slide deck of how they would address this issue. Basically, doing a bit of free consultancy. I, I I find that a bit distasteful, but maybe that's just me. Um, we then got the standard of the candidate spec. Now, two things I've not mentioned at this point. I've not mentioned the job description, and I've not mentioned the people spec, not mentioned the person description, because those are, and I say this with a huge amount of respect for our colleagues in HR, one or two of whom are already on the call. The job description and the people spec, they tend to be written formulaically. They're based on the last two or three people that were in that role, or the last time they spec'd out the role, or when they created the role. And they're generally not written by the people in the job or managing the job. They're written by somebody 5 years ago or by HR or whatever. So when I'm looking at the job description, I actually want to know what is the job, what is it actually? What goes on? What's the day-to-day consist of? What are the key performance metrics? What is it this role is purported to do? Likewise, when it comes to the person spec, I don't want, they've got to be under 25 and they need to have 35 years experience and all that sort of stuff. I want to, I need somebody from these types of universities with this type of qualification, and they've probably been doing this. I want a specification. I want to know exactly who they're looking for. I want to know who they're looking for, not what they're looking for. Qualifications, bit of experience, all that is what I want to know who. So I'll talk about that in a second. Then we got the short-term goals in the role, the 30, 60, 90 kind of planning. That tells me two things. It tells me what the opportunity is for somebody. It also tells me just how realistic is this company being. Are they being incredibly overly ambitious and that they're looking for the one in a million unicorn superstar, or are they looking for somebody pretty good? They're looking for somebody okay. It also tells me how much they've thought about it. And again, this is one of those areas where when I ask this of a client, if they're having to think about it for the first time, that's good. It's a little bit of and it's an amber flag, it's a yellow flag, but it's not a red flag. But getting them to think about it for the first time is really useful, because if you have a candidate come through the door, they start, and the first 30, 60, 90 days are there laid out in front of them, everybody's happier, because that gets me nicely through the guarantee period. Happy days. I now want to know the value proposition. for the role? How do I sell this role to somebody? I don't know about most of you guys, but I personally, I'm a search person. I don't hit the job boards. I don't look for open to work banners on LinkedIn. I'm not putting ads out. I'm looking for people who are basically happy where they are so that I can make them unhappy. Then I can make them happy again, or happier than they were originally. So I'm looking for, how do I contact somebody who is not actively looking, somebody who is not unhappy, and sell them on this opportunity? Alternatively, how do I get somebody who is actively looking but potentially talking to a couple of dozen people and convince them that this now is the opportunity that they should be going for? So I need to know how to sell it. And you'd think that companies would have thought about this. Almost none of them have. They talk about salary and they talk about benefits. This is where they get really vague because they don't want to make any prior commitments to you because they think it'll come back to haunt them. Um, but find out, if somebody's a really great performer, what does this role offer them? Where could they be in a year, 3, 5, 10 years from now? What's the proposition I can take to somebody? If you've got a role that's got share options or long-term incentive plans or whatever it may be, this is when you want to bring it out. What is it that distinguishes this opportunity from, them? That's what we need because we're going to turn it into a pitch and a proposition. Um, and then I've got targeting for the candidates. And that to me is, where do you think I should be looking and where should I avoid? In my particular space, with UK insurance brokers, there are certain companies that are known for employing and growing really great, talented people. And there are companies who are known for, how can be respectful, employing Muppets and breeding Muppets. So, who do you look at, who do you look for, who do you look at, and who do you actively avoid? Because I don't care what market you're in, there are certain firms where if your client sees that name on their CV, they're going to go, "Ooh, they were there. They were there for 3 years. Oh God." Everybody's got somebody like that in their marketplace. Best to find out who they are early rather than find out when you've gone to all the trouble of sourcing a candidate, put them in front of the hiring manager who goes, "No, no, they've worked there. They've been there. Oh, okay, I didn't know that was an issue." So that's the basic headings. Let me talk about some, how can I put this politely? Let me talk about some tips and tricks. Let me talk about some pro tips that I can give you. Um, that's basically the content of the job order form. There's a lot more detail. It drills down much more in the template that's in the academy. And there's some other stuff going in there Monday morning as well. So some stuff in there. But there are certain things we want to pull out. Um, the first is we want to find out what I call hiring issues and pains. What do I mean by that? An issue is a problem that they're experiencing. Now, I don't mean a problem with hiring. I mean a problem if this role isn't filled. So an issue is a problem. Pain is the consequence of the issue. So if they get the wrong role, the wrong person in this role, what will the impact be? That's a hiring issue and pain. If this process takes 6 months instead of 6 weeks, what will that mean? What will the impact be? What will that cost? What will they lose out on? That's a hiring issue and pain. What that gives us is urgency. It gives us momentum, or it tells us that there is no urgency, there will be no momentum, and we act accordingly. If they're not bothered about having somebody in the role for 6 months, we don't need to prioritize it. We just work it nice and gradually. Second aspect is hiring drivers. So issue is a problem. If they don't hire the right person or if it takes too long, what does that mean? That's the pain. Hiring driver is, if you get the right person in, what's the impact? What's the difference between having somebody who's okay and somebody who is exceptional? What does the difference between adequate and fantastic mean for them, the business, the team, the person, the hiring manager? Now, those two things together will, the driver takes them towards hiring the right person. The issue and pain takes them away from messing around and not moving and not acting on it. So those two things together give us some momentum. They give us some drive. They also give us the how can I put that? They give us the controlling factors. They give us leverage for later in the process if we ever need it. Because if somebody's dragging their heels, we can go back to them and remind them or ask them about the cost of not filling this role. Or if somebody's umming and ahhing about, well, which of these people should we see? We can take them back to what they gain by having the right person rather than just anybody. So it gives that bit of information. It's not just about urgency, it's also about leverage for later on, because we always get these little bumps in the road. Those two factors, hiring issues and pains, hiring drivers, that's how we incentivize our clients to solve the problem and move on, to move forwards. There's a couple of questions that I've sort of thrown in there in passing almost. One of the key ones for me is, what does exceptional look like? What does exceptional mean in this role? What's the difference between exceptional and average? Because if I have a clear understanding of those two things, I know what I'm looking for. Okay. Now, there's two other questions that I'm going to ask from that. The first is, how would you recognize it? How will you know that you've found someone who is genuinely exceptional? If I want to really get the most out of this, I can ask them how they'll know that somebody's potentially exceptional just from their CV, just from their profile. That then tells me what I'm looking for in my search, what I'm looking for in the CVs that come in, what to look for, what to target for. So on paper, how will you know the difference between an exceptional prospect and one that's okay? And they will then tell you that distinction is so valuable, because with that distinction in your pocket, you can look at somebody's LinkedIn profile, you can look at somebody's top page of their resume or their CV and go, yes, or not really, very quickly screen in or out. There's then two things I call shortcut questions. And these are fundamentally from NLP, they're from neuro-linguistic programming. And they give you access to the way somebody's thinking unconsciously. So I'm looking for the answer to these two questions. That they give you two different bits of information. The first is, how will you know that you've found the perfect person? How will you know that you've found the perfect person? And they're then going to give you pretty much a personality and a person spec. This goes straight back into your person spec. How will you know that you found the ideal person? When you add that together to what's the difference between okay and exceptional, and then you say, how will you know that you've found the perfect person? That gives you two hugely important pieces of information. The second shortcut question is based on something called a convincer strategy or a decision strategy in neurolinguistic programming. Let me give you an explanation of that. With my partner, she has a sense in her head of what she wants to achieve, what she wants from something. If she's buying whatever, let's say she's buying a car, okay, and she'll have a spec in her head. If she was looking at a piece of real estate, she'd know the layout that she wants. She'll know the amount of space she needs. She'll have a sense of what area it should be in, how big the bedroom should be, how big the bathroom should be, where that whole layout in her head. And then when she sees a place, even if she sees the pictures online, it fits what she's looking for or it doesn't. It fits that specification or it doesn't. Me, that's her decision strategy. Me, um, I don't really give a toss. Like that happens to my cars. When I get a car, don't get me wrong, I've had some really nice cars. But for me, it's four wheels, it goes from A to B. I'm more interested in A and B than I am in the bit in between. So um, for me, I sit in I get a sense of the sort of price I want to pay and the basic specs it's got to have. I sit in the car. Does it feel right? Does it sound right? When I hit my foot on the accelerator, is it too noisy? Is it kind of purring? What's it like? I just want to get the experience of driving it. Um, Likewise, if I'm hiring, I need to have a bit of a test drive with somebody. So in an ideal case for me, if I'm hiring, I just want to sit with somebody for an hour and, watch them do a bit of work and we'll do a bit of collaboration together for an hour. Ideal world, I would like somebody there for half a day or so just to, take each other out for a test drive. That's not always feasible, but I did say ideal world. So if you ask me, how will you know that you've got exactly the right person? My answer would be some version of, well, I kind of need to work alongside them for a little while. My partner's would be, well, I need to know that they've done this and this and this because that's what we need to do in this role. So hers will be based on, do they match this specification, this floor plan for the job? Have they got these skills? Have they got this experience? Do they know how to use this software? Can they do that? If they can, that will match her specification. Me, it's probably the only place in my life where I'm even vaguely touchy-feely. I just need to kind of try it on. I need to try it on with a car. I need to, whatever it may be. So those two shortcut questions. How will you know you find the right person? By the way, the answer you get depends on the question you ask. So if you say, how will you know you've got the right person? That'll get you a slightly okay answer. If you ask, how will you know that you have found the perfect person for this role? That will get you a better quality of answer because it's a better quality question. You're asking for perfect instead of right. And then, okay, what has to happen for you to be completely convinced? What has to happen for you to be certain? If you see it's not quite the same, how will you know you found the right person? Is about aspects, it's about qualities. But then what has to happen for you to be absolutely convinced, for you to be certain that they're the right person and they'll deliver for you, that they'll fit with the business? How will you know and what has to happen? I wouldn't ask them back to back like that because they'll go, it's the same damn question. And then you have to go into an explanation. No, it's not. It's not quite the same. Um, Separate them out. Ask them at different times in slightly different ways. But that's the basic structure. Now, with all that, you can see why it takes me at least half an hour and often over an hour to do it. But equally, with my brief, with my job order, which is by the time I've written it out, and me being me, I don't write mine on screen. I have a scratchy pen and I still use a fountain pen for God's sake. Or if I'm transcribing it, if I've recorded it and I'm transcribing it, however I do it, it's a document. It tends to run to somewhere between 10 and 13 pages. But every single thing in there is gold dust. Because honestly, if I've done the job order right, I don't need a massively competent and incredibly experienced consultant to take it on. It's the kind of spec that I could give to a tech competent 10-year-old who could probably do the legwork and find me some decent candidates because the job order is so detailed and so comprehensive that I've almost taken the skill out of it. I've taken a lot of the skill out of the recruitment and interview process because I've spent so long focusing on defining it in the job order. So that's the area, that's the structure I work within. As I say, it is available within the Influence Academy. It's under straight line recruitment and it's module 10. There is more information going in tomorrow and Monday. So what you'll see now is the finished videos and the job order template, but it won't be the final version. There's some graphics and some charts and some flow charts and things to go in there. So bear with us a little bit on that. And that is me done in terms of job orders. But let me emphasize, there's a lot of stuff that we talk about. There's a lot of skills, there's a lot of strategies. Personal opinion, the more I think about it, the more valuable and important this is, because it prevents almost all of the time wasting, soul sucking bullshit that we get as recruiters. If I'm being slightly harsh, I would say that almost all of the soul sucking, time consuming bullshit happens because we haven't done this thoroughly enough, well enough up front. So we're not clear. The client isn't clear. We think we're excited. The client isn't really bought in or urgent. So I cannot overemphasize how useful and important this is. Hang on a second. No, I can't do it. I can't overemphasize it. It really is that crucial to get it right. So, as always, come back to me with questions, thoughts, observations, decent jokes, whatever it may be in the community. In there every day. We'll try and come back to everything pretty much immediately where I can do. If not, it will be a couple of hours. Okay, so just before I throw it open to the Q&A generally, there's one specific question I was asked to cover off from one of our members, which is something that we've not included so far in the Influence Academy very much. Within the Influence Academy, there is a big course called Objection Slayer. It's a big thing. In hindsight, it's way too big, but objection handling, because objections come in lots of different forms and they come from clients, but they also come from candidates. If we're in a search role and we're trying to get somebody who's basically happy and we're trying to make them unhappy so that we can then make them delighted, there has to be a phase where we make them unhappy. And if you've got somebody who's basically happy in their job, or if you've got a prospect who's basically happy with their internal TA team, or they're happy with their existing PSL, we're going to get some pushback. We're going to get some what traditional sales calls objections. Now, the module on this, I was releasing it on Tuesday. Bearing in mind this specific thing that's come up, I think I'll release it early. I'll release it probably release it tomorrow afternoon. But I'm just going to take you through the couple of important factors, give you the headline on it. The first thing is traditional sales techniques get objections completely wrong. And I speak as someone who taught this stuff for years. I knew at the time it wasn't right, but it was the best I'd got. Now, fortunately, it's nothing like the best I've got. So let me give you the best I've got. First thing is objections. That terminology doesn't work, because if you've got somebody who is objecting, it's really tempting to think of them as objectionable. And that's not a great mindset to go into a conversation with. They're not actually objecting. It's not like a court of law that you don't say, oh yeah, and the salary kind of salary range is this. I object. What? What? It's not an objection. What it is, it's something in the back of somebody's head. It's an unanswered question. And it's unanswered because they've never spoken it. Or it's the fact that you've not convinced them in quite the right way, or you've not convinced them enough about something and they've not said it. So when a candidate goes, I'm pretty happy where I am, or when a client goes, well, I'm not sure we need to make a change, they're not objecting. They're just telling you they've got questions that they haven't had answered, and or you haven't convinced them about your case yet. Now, traditional sales technique is full of I'm going to be polite and respectful. It's full of ideas like, identify the real objection and then outweigh the problem with more benefits. Right. Okay. Let me give you one thing to never, ever, ever do. This identify the real objection. Yeah? Somebody says, "Oh, I'm not sure." There's one word that you should never, ever, ever, ever ask. And that's the word that almost all conventional sales technique would tell you to ask. You never, ever ask somebody why they're not sure, why they're not convinced. Because if you ask somebody a why question, they'll answer it. And the more you talk and the more you explain why you're not convinced, the more you dig your heels into that opinion and you take a slight dip in the ground and you turn it into a trench. Oh, I think I'm pretty happy where I am. Oh, why do you not want to make a move? Why don't you want to look at other opportunities? Well, because, and they'll give you 15 really good reasons. And now you're trying to dig yourself out of that. And never ask somebody why they're not sure. I will always ask them some version of what would make you sure. Sounds like it's the same thing. It's really not. One is about them justifying their concerns. The other is about explaining how to get past their concerns, how to make their concerns go away. So I don't want them to justify and explain their concerns. I want them to tell me how to make their concerns disappear. Very different mindset. So um, I don't think of, with that framework, I don't think of objections as a problem. I think of objections as the best way to close deals. Because if this is sat in the back of somebody's head and they've not said it, it's not out there, I can't close the deal because it's still sat in the back of their head. Even if they haven't really identified what's niggling them, it's still going to stop them from making a move or letting me into the PSL. So um, what I've got is what we call a REAP framework. We've got peeing on people, we've got reaping, and we've got sacking. We're going to reap the objection. First thing is we repeat it back to them. Then we empathize with them. Then we ask them lots of precision questions, and then we make a proposal or a suggestion. So REAP just ties the acronym together quite neatly. Repeat back what they said, literally verbatim, word for word, not paraphrasing, parrot phrasing. Literally the words that they used. If they say, I'm not entirely sure, a lot of conventional sales training, conventional sales technique says, what is it you're uncertain of? What is it you're not sure about? I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite certain. Literally play it back to them. You say you're not quite sure. You're not certain. So literally use somebody's words back to them. Parrot phrasing. And then when they explain a bit more, go, oh, yeah, okay, I'm with you. So you say you're not sure. You say you're basically happy where you are. Fair enough. Now, that empathize stage is literally consists of that. Fair enough. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I see what you mean. Okay. It's just acknowledging that they have an opinion. It's acknowledging that they've said something. I'm not agreeing with it. I'm certainly not sympathizing. I'm just empathizing. So I just acknowledge that they said something. Excuse me. Then I ask them precision questions. If you've done module 5 of straight line recruitment, and if you haven't, why haven't you? Module 5 of straight line recruitment, there's a section in there about precision questions and about PEA. The reason that these techniques and skills overlap is A, it's a hell of a lot easier to learn that way, but B, influencing human beings is influencing human beings. So if you're trying to persuade somebody to do this in this context, it makes sense, and that works. It makes sense to use exactly the same technique in a different context. So if you're talking about kicking a soccer ball, the technique of kicking a football to take a penalty is basically the same technique as you would to put a pass 30 yards into somebody's foot. Same basic thing. You keep your head down, the ball follows your shoulders, keep your hit with the instep, keep your knee over the ball. All the basic rules that probably make no sense to anybody who's never played football. But what the technique is the same, the context is totally different. Content the same, context different. So precision questions, which would be things like, how do you mean? In what way? What's your definition? Could you give me an example? Those sorts of things. So let's say a candidate says, I'm basically happy where I am. I would repeat back, okay, so you say you're basically happy where you are. Um, Fair enough. So you say basically, how do you mean? Uh, yes, I picked on the operative word. Basically, how do you mean? You're basically happy. How do you mean? Or you say you're basically happy in what way? And then, or somebody's typical one from a candidate is, oh, it'd have to be an amazing offer. Okay, you said it'd have to be an amazing offer. Fair enough. Um, what's your definition of amazing? And now we're off to the races. So ask the questions that open up them to the possibility of new ways of looking at things. It answers the stuff that's in their head. Yeah. What you'll also find with the ask phase is that sometimes those shortcut questions that I just talked about, what has to happen for you to be certain? How will you know that? Will quite often be great asks, great questions to use at this point. So somebody says, well, I'm not sure that you do a better job than our existing PSL. Okay, so you're not sure we do a better job than your existing. Okay. Let me ask you a question. What has to happen for you to be absolutely certain that we could blow the doors off? Whatever answer I get to that, it's a lot better than me trying to outweigh the benefits, give them lots of additional benefits that I hope they're not getting from their existing suppliers, because that just won't work. They'll just dig their heels in more. What has to happen for you to be completely convinced? It's different mindset, which is why you have to change your mindset about objections before this will work. If you think they're just being bloody minded and awkward, none of this is going to work. Change you first. And then the last stage is propose. And that's where you simply say, well, because of that, what suggest is because of that, how about we? And again, that will make sense. I'm not going to get into that massively because of time constraints, but that simple expression, because of that, is enormously powerful. I should give you a brief explanation. If you remember the days when photocopies were massive and expensive, there was an experiment done at Harvard, and a bunch of students who were the working with the researcher would go to the front of a queue at a copier. They'd cut the line basically, and they'd say, "Excuse me, can I cut in?" And about 60% of the time, people say, "Yeah, sure." Because if the stakes aren't high, about 60% of people will say yes to just about anything. And I wish I'd known that when I was a younger man. But anyway, if you then go to the front of the queue and you say, "Excuse me, can I cut in? Because I've only got 5 pages and I've got a lecture to get to," about 94% of people will let you cut in because you've got an important sounding reason. If you then go to the front of the queue and you say, "Excuse me, can I cut in because I need to make some copies?" 93% of people will let you cut in. It's 94% if you have a really good reason and use the word because. It's 93% if you have no reason whatsoever, but use the word because. So anytime I'm introducing a proposal or recommendation, a suggestion, I always preface it with the word because. Because of that, if all of this is true, if all of this makes sense, because of that, why don't we try this? Because of that, how about? And that's how I use an objection. I'm using air quotes, objection to actually take my deals forwards. I will often use objections to close my deals. I'll use them to close candidates on sending me their profiles and let me represent them. I'll use it on clients to actually bring me in and give me an assignment. So it's the way you apply this is hugely important. Change your mindset, then apply the REAP technique. I will make this live tomorrow afternoon, and I'll send everybody a note that it has gone live because it is an important part of the process. Tie this together with the job order form, and it's like having a cape and a big S on your chest. So really good, really important stuff. Okay, I've gone on too long, for which I apologize. I'm going to throw it open to the Q&A, guys. Ask me anything, as they say. Oh, if we're going to go to the live Q&A, if you are in a situation where you can, turn your camera back on, just so we can see each other. If you're not, don't worry about it. If you're driving, if you're sat on the loo, whatever it may be, throw some questions to me, people. That's the lovely Prina with the map of the world. Is that your sort of this is I'm going to take over plan?
No, I wish this office used to be the kids'
Oh,
playroom.
right. So it's not these are the parts of the world I'm about to take over.
Not quite. No, it's got penguins and it's quite childish to be honest. So I'm glad that's all you can see.
Yeah, I'm staying out of this conversation now. Oh,
Steve, you don't want to see my background. It's the husband's bar room. So we'll
oh,
leave
blimey.
that.
Let's stay away from that then.
It's office space bar room. So sorry, the kids are going to keep running in and out. So apologize, but if you hear any other noises.
Don't worry about it. These things happen. So what can I help you with, ladies and gentlemen?
Stephen, I'm just going to thank you for your time. I've got a dash.
All right, Joe, I'm not taking it personally, mate. I'll give you we'll do the good bit. Now you're off. Fair enough?
Oh, cheers.
My pleasure. Never a chore, Jerome. Never a chore.
I was going to say, Stephen, some of the things that you touched upon, I always felt that I was a little bit weak at objection handling. And I've learned quite a lot over the past few weeks, to be fair. I've grown in confidence, which has really helped. And one thing I learned from one of the calls where I had someone going umming and ahhing kind of thing, um, it was a case of, oh, can I call you later? And that was a yes or no question.
Mm,
And he ummed and ahed, and I thought, oh, there's something there. Oh my goodness.
yeah.
But then I came, and he did say no at the end, but fair enough. I learned from
Mm,
that.
yeah.
And I've learned that from now on, I'm going to be like, what's the best number to get you on?
Yeah.
Let
What's the
me
best
give you a
time?
call.
Yeah.
And it's about open, open questions, I think.
Very much so. Yeah. It's
Uh,
open, but it's directing the open questions. So it's not just saying, oh, when shall I give you a call? It's but when's the best time to give you a
yeah.
call? What's the best number? Yeah.
Yes.
So I was talking with somebody. I live in Yorkshire, so I was talking with somebody earlier in the week, local client, and they've got three different mobile numbers because they've got one for their personal, they've got one for the office for work, and then they've got a different one for when they're working from home because their signal is so crap and the work mobile doesn't work there. So what's the best number to get you on?
Mm,
Yeah, they gave me all three and said, well, if this one doesn't work, use that. If that doesn't work, call me on my personal. Okay, happy days. So the other aspect is if somebody's umming and ahhing, the fact
yeah.
that you're spotting that is always good. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't, how can I put that? I never see that umming and ahhing as a problem. I always think it's good. It means I've made them stop and think.
It
Yeah.
did. It did. And I thought to myself, okay, rather than calling you in the next 6 months for this opportunity, I'm going to call you sooner and not give you the opportunity to say yes or no.
Hmm.
So yeah, he's scheduled for sort of like 2 to 3 months. I found that sort of like asking more questions about more open questions on when are you free? Let's get you sorted.
Yeah.
Helps a lot. Helps a
There's
lot.
there's another one that I call the sharp angle,
Mm,
which is to say, I've got somebody who's umming and ahhing. Like, "Well, yeah, I can sense that there's stuff." Yeah. You'd be amazed, by the way, how few people can do that. Most people are so inside their own head talking to themselves that they actually don't hear the hesitation. They just don't get it. So the fact that you're hearing it is great. My sharp angle version is literally to say, okay, I'm sensing hesitation. So let me just ask you. Yeah.
fantastic.
I'm sensing uncertainty. Let me just ask you, what has to happen for you to be sure that this will be great for you?
Fantastic. Because I've actually, funny enough, today I've spoken. So we can put this into context for everyone else. I've got to find good quality to come into our company. And I was speaking to someone, they were like, "Oh, my job's fantastic. I really enjoy it." So no pain points in that point. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay, that's okay. That's not a problem." But I'd built up a rapport because she was cooking dinner for
Yeah.
her child at the moment, and I was like,
Okay.
"Oh, I'm cooking for dinner for the kids, and me
Yeah.
and the husband are going to get a takeaway. So I made a bit of a joke about getting an Indian paleta, and that was really nice because that broke down the barrier. And
Yeah.
I feel like I'm quite good at breaking down barriers. I feel I've got a really natural, happy side to me that
Yeah.
makes everyone feel comfortable. And from there, she's like, "Well, you know what? I think you should speak to us again." And I've managed to book in an interview for her.
Cool.
And this is where we can go into more detail. So
Yeah.
I feel like I'm learning a lot quicker. I'm growing in confidence, which is really important for me because
Yeah.
let's just say I've come into a market that's not been my forte.
Hmm.
So I feel like I'm growing.
I think it's what you're saying is massively important because you're spotting all the little triggers. I mean, um, personally, I am not very likable. I'm just not.
Don't
Yeah.
believe you.
Check me out. Check me out. I promise you, people you know people who know me. Trust me, I'm not a massively likable person. I'm good at what I do, and people trust me to deliver. But I'm not. I don't like. Honestly, between you and me, I don't like people that much. You know,
Bit like my dog then.
I
She
like
doesn't like
spread.
adults, just loves kids.
I love spreadsheets. I love process, but people, they're all messy. You know, but so for that one, for example, you've got somebody who's like, oh yeah, but I'm, pretty much fine where I am. There's a really soft sounding question, which is, okay, brilliant. Always agree with them. Yeah,
Mm,
brilliant.
absolutely.
Um, would ideal world. I'm glad you're really happy where you are. That's fantastic. Let me just ask you, in an ideal world, what would you like a little bit more of or less of?
Yeah,
And you've just put a little crack in there, and now you can rip the door open. Yeah.
absolutely. Because that's something I did with a candidate today. So I said to her, I was like, okay, I'm really glad that you're happy where you are. However, a lot of candidates I speak to have a bit of a problem with commission.
Hmm.
And I know that that's an issue. However, the commission that we offer, it's one of a kind.
Hmm.
And she mentioned that she does get it paid annually. And she laughed about it. She said, yeah, it's come and gone now. So I've spent it. And I was like, okay, so it's once a year. Well,
Yeah.
how about getting it every month?
Yeah. Or
And then she mentioned obviously her child. And for me, that's a big trigger because I've got three girls of my own. And it was so nice to be able to relate to someone.
mm,
And I think I'm very much a people's person, rather than
mm,
trying to sell. I'm very much looking after a person.
mm,
That's sort of like the area I come from, and that's my sales perspective.
yeah. But mine's probably the exact opposite of that, which doesn't mean yours is wrong. Mine's the opposite. Mine is I try to never sell.
Yeah.
What I try to do is find a problem
Mm,
or find something that they want, and then I try and make the problem go away or show that I can help
absolutely.
somebody get what they want. But
Yes.
the actual, if I have to make a pitch, I always think it's a kind of a partial failure. But what I'm always focused on is what isn't quite right, what could be better. Because
Yeah.
if I can get that, I can turn what was a slight niggle, like you've done with, I'll get paid once a year and it's gone, to, well, how about getting much
Mm,
more often? Oh, yeah, okay. And it suddenly flips a switch
yeah.
and it
Absolutely.
creates the opportunity.
Uh,
So
yeah.
I don't sell that much. Well, no, that's not true. I sell a shitload, but people don't notice it. Yeah,
Sure.
that's the distinction. If because my view is if people see you selling, they'll just stop buying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because people love to own things, have things, buy things, use things, do things, but they hate being sold to.
Mm,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
if you're not visibly selling, it's easy for them to buy.
Yeah.
So some people think that oh, you've got to be hard nosed and aggressive. Nah, nah. If you do that, you've got to kiss a lot of frogs and accept a lot of unhappy people. There's an old movie. I can't believe this is an old movie now. Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino called The Devil's Advocate, and I'm not going to try and quote the entire speech because it gets a bit. No, I'm not going to do that. But there's one line in there which you don't ever let them see you coming.
Mm,
Yeah, don't ever let them see you coming. I'm a surprise. They don't see me coming. And that's what I'm always trying to train people to do is
sure.
not look like you're selling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what you're talking about there. You don't look like you're selling because you don't feel like you're selling.
Absolutely.
But by God, you are.
I know,
Yeah,
I know. It's crazy. I never thought I'd be a saleswoman. I'm more of a nurturer.
that's good. Good. Yeah, because somebody who just wants to go in and kill something, well, that's great, but then you've got to find the next one and the next one and the next one. But if you can get somebody in and then nurture them through the hiring process, happy days.
Hey ho.
That's a lot more effective than just like kill them and throw them over the fence.
Absolutely.
Hurl the dead body over the fence for somebody else to take care of. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, other questions, ladies and gentlemen? What else have I got for you? How can I help you? Oh, it always goes quiet when I throw that one out. Oh, it always does. I've dealt with the main one I got by email, so I'll give you one more shot, one more chance to throw it in there. Any more for any more? About what I've done today or about situations? I just shared one quick story with you. It took me about 30 seconds. I felt a bit guilty today, which happens very rarely. Somebody sent me a lovely set of emails about their e-shots, and I think I could do this a bit better. And they sent me a one that's pitching out a candidate and one that's trying to get a Teams meeting set up for a business conversation. And I went through them and I sort of did the edits in red. And I'm looking at them on my screen now, and I felt so guilty because this whole screen's just full of red. And it's me going, well, try this, do that, don't do this, do that, do that, do this, do that. I felt really guilty about sending it. Right to the point where she went, oh, thank you, appreciate it. But it's just like, look, I'm looking at it and it has this big sea of red. They've sent out a 7-line email and I put 22 lines of red ink on it. If you've got anything that you want me to look at, I promise not to put quite so much red ink on stuff. So anything you want me to look at, drop it in the community. If it does feel a bit confidential, send it me by email, which is what a lot of people are doing. If there's anything I've not addressed today, let me know in the community or by email again. Ladies, gentlemen, some old faces there that are back in the world.
Before you go, I've got a question. My
All
phone's
right.
only just let me connect because apparently I'm on safe driving mode.
Okay, excellent. I take it you're not driving.
No, but my
Okay.
phone is. If you've got the choice, often this doesn't happen. Who would you debrief first, candidate or client?
Who had a debrief first, candidate or client?
Because what it then puts the frame around the next conversation you have. So I
Yes.
just wondered.
Yeah. Personally, and this is partly because of the market I'm in, I debrief the client first and then the candidate. That's simply because the market I'm working at the moment, there's a severe shortage of unicorns, whereas there's not a glut of clients, but there's more clients available. There's more demand for good people than there are good people. So I debrief the client, then I can go back to the candidate and sell them or deal with any issues then. If I was working the opposite way, so I was working with clients short, so there's not many roles, but there's lots of candidates, I debrief the candidate first and then talk to the client. Basically, I want to go to the one who needs the most selling second. That makes sense? Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a thought provoker. I've never thought about that one. Cheers. Appreciate it. End of the call. Thanks for that. Okay. Thank you, everybody. This will be, as always, this will be back up in weekly webinar Wonderland. It'll be on there by 10:30 tomorrow. Be good and dive into the straight line recruitment module, and you find all the stuff we're talking about. See you soon. Bye now.
Thank you.